नमस्कार दोस्तों और जय हिंद। आप सभी को स्वागत है इन माय चैनल 1971 वॉर बुक सीरीज। तो दोस्तों, जंग में हमने देखे हैं द इंपॉर्टेंस ऑफ इन्फेंट्री, आर्मर्ड कोर एंड आल्सो द एयरफोर्स इंक्लूडिंग सम नेवल कॉन्ट्रीब्यूशंस। लेकिन आर्टिलरी के बारे में ज्यादा लोग बात नहीं करते हैं। एक ऑफेंसिव में जब आप जा रहे हैं विथ योर ओन बटालियन विथ आर्मर्ड सपोर्ट, artillery is used extensively to pound and bombard the enemy positions effectively, ताकि आपका दुश्मन से फायर कम हो जाए, दुश्मन अपने ट्रेंचेस और अपने सैंडबैग पोजीशंस और अपने बंकर्स पे बैठ के ही तबाह हो जाए और आपको अपने ऑब्जेक्टिव हासिल करना इजी हो जाए। Brigadier Ajit Apte had served as a second lieutenant in the 14th Field Regiment, which took part in the offensive in Bangladesh, especially on the western side of the country, under the 2 Corps supporting the 9 Infantry Divisions advance towards Jessore and eventually towards Khulna. He took part in the Battle of Garibpur as well, being a second lieutenant, using his 25-pounder artillery gun effectively against the enemy positions. और उसके साथ उनका तजुर्बा इन एडवांसिंग ऑल द वे अप टू खुलना एंड विटनेसिंग द सरेंडर सेरेमनी एट खुलना के बारे में भी हम जानेंगे, इंक्लूडिंग लर्निंग अ बिट अबाउट हिज ओन एक्सटेंसिव मिलिट्री करियर एंड हिज ओन बैकग्राउंड फ्रॉम द आर्म्ड फोर्सेस। सो लेट्स वेलकम ब्रिगेडियर अजीत आप्टे टू आवर प्रोग्राम टुडे।
So, Debu, good morning. Firstly, thank you very much for inviting me on this podcast. To give you an idea, I am a second generation Army officer.
Okay.
My father was in the British Indian Army. Then my elder cousin, first cousin, was also a fighter pilot in the Indian Air Force, but unfortunately was killed in action in the 1971 war on the first day when the Indian Air Force launched a counter-air strike on Pakistan on 4th December 1971. He was killed in action, fighter pilot. His name was Flight Lieutenant Brigadier Apte, and he got a Veer Chakra for gallantry. And my other younger cousin was also in the Indian Navy. He also retired as a commodore. And incidentally, we were three of us fighting during the 1971 war, Army, Navy and Air Force. So that in a nutshell is my little family history. That's how it is.
I said, sir, wonderful family legacy, sir, to be honest.
Thank you very much, Debu, very kind of you.
So, as a second lieutenant, sir, in 1971, I would like to know a bit about how your unit, the 14th Field Regiment, got into the action in the Eastern Front.
Yes, Debu, soon after our young officers course was closed, it got actually curtailed by about 10 days because of the impending war-like situation. East Pakistan turmoil, which started in earlier, but consequent to the whisking away of Mujibur Rahman from East Pakistan into the West, things were deteriorating politically, diplomatically and geopolitically. So the Indian Army was preparing for any untoward incident from the eastern side. 15th August we got orders for my regiment to move on to the Barrackpore side.
Calcutta.
So yes, Calcutta. So obviously I was in the advance party of the regiment. We were three of us. My battery commander Major Sudhir Misra, Captain Robin Das from another battery, and I was the gun position officer. So in the advance party, we went to Kanchrapara, first Barrackpore, then Kanchrapara, and then we were placed under 9 Infantry Division.
Okay.
And yes, so my regiment was also in the process of moving out from Hathigarh to this new place, Kanchrapara. And I did a lot of work there with Eastern Command in Fort William, Calcutta, to get maps and to get other logistics, tied up, coordinated for my regiment to arrive. The regiment arrived in the first week of September, and we were, of course, told to be on 6 hours notice because anything could happen. We got warning orders to move, and one battery had to be deployed
September
September
1971.
1971. Yes, yes.
Okay.
And finally, my battery moved out. I had carried out initial reconnaissance of the gun positions with 67 Field Regiment, which was already there, and I took over the gun positions from there. A postmate of mine from the NDA and the IMA was already there. I knew him, so that helped out a lot. And on 24th September, my battery was moved out to join 350 Infantry Brigade, and I was placed in direct support with 1st Jammu and Kashmir Rifles.
Acha,
So
acha.
yes, and the other battalions with 350 Infantry Brigade were 4 Sikh, the famous Haragadi Purton, as you would know, and we had 26 Madras. So that was the composition of 350 Infantry Brigade, to which my regiment was in direct support. So I commenced firing on 28th September 1971. Our forward observation officer was Captain Suresh Sharma. This was in the area of Bondao,
Okay.
which ultimately would, move ahead towards Boira, the famous salient there. So 350 Brigade was there, which was ultimately to become the Jessore Khulna sector. And on that time, two corps had not been raised when we started firing. So 2 Corps was raised on 6th October 1971, and 9 Infantry Division was placed under 2 Corps, and 4 Infantry Division, which I think was in Allahabad, was also placed under 2 Corps. So I was there for the newly raising of 2 Corps as a subaltern, and my commanding officer was Lieutenant Colonel R.P. Sahasrabuddhe, and that is how the regiment was composed. And so I opened fire as a gun position officer on 28th September, and we continued firing on various targets. The regiment then moved ahead, and we were deployed. We kept moving a number of gun positions till finally we were at a place called Boira, and various other gun positions around. And we started firing for the first Jack rifles. Things started hotting up in the first
This
week of
was in
November.
Maslia, sir, I guess.
Yes, yes, you're right, Muslia, absolutely right. So,
Before we go to the war, could you talk a bit about the equipment? I think you were armed with 25 pounder guns.
we had 25 pounder guns, and in our brigade, all the 3 regiments, that is, we had 6 Field Regiment, which was allotted to 42 Infantry Brigade, 25 pounder guns. We had 14 Field Regiment, my regiment allotted to 350 Infantry Brigade, 25 pounder guns. Then we had 67 Field Regiment allotted to 32 Infantry Brigade, again 25 pounder guns. And we had 78 medium regiments with 130 millimeter guns, out of which one battery went to Alpha Squadron of 45 Cavalry,
Okay.
which was commanded by Major Bantu Batra, later Major General Batra. And that squadron with this medium battery went to 4 Infantry Division. So 78 medium regiment less a battery was with us, and as you know, medium guns are always placed in direct support for the armored regiment. So that is what happened. We had a dim locating battery, which was 201 dim locating battery, and they were there for various locating tasks, and also for making us fire the counter bombardment plans as they would emerge. There was also an air defense regiment in our formation, and so this was the the overall profile of the equipment. And of course we had our normal support weapons within the regiment,
Mhm.
like the light machine guns and our own weapons. So that was the configuration. Uh, that's how it happened.
Okay.
Yeah. So I was coming to.
Maslia.
We fought the Battle of Bastia, that BOP there, first Jack Rifle. It was a successful battle on 12th November. After which we continued firing at targets like Chaugacha, Garipur, Chutipur, all these targets were there given by OP officers from First Jack Rifles in, you know, uh, 26 Madras and 4C. And irrespective of which battery was affiliated to which battalion, in the artillery, you know that when the artillery is unused, it is lying dormant, it is used to fire for other brigades also.
Okay, sir.
So,
So another question:
yeah,
how did the fire support go on? Like, uh, it was through communication, as far as I know. Like, there would be one person with the infantry asking for the fire support. So, how did that entire thing go on, sir?
yeah. So, Debu, what happens is, uh, in an artillery regiment, there are three batteries, and each battery is in direct support to an infantry battalion or the infantry brigade. So what happens is that the entire artillery brigade, when it is deployed, there is a field regiment in direct support to the infantry brigade, each regiment. But the fire control is done through the forward observation officers. Each battery has two forward observation officers, whom we call as FOOs. They are with the infantry battalion with the different companies. So they call for fire, they register targets, and then they call for fire from the artillery batteries. So the main method of communication is the radio set. We had ANPRC 25. We all,
ANPRC-25.
yes, ANPRC 25s had just come in, but the radio set 62 and the HM30s had not been phased out. They were the old heavy radio sets which were used by the Indian Army in 1962 Chinese conflict, very heavy, and they were all high frequency. So the enemy could easily catch on to your net. And the same sets were used heavily in the 65 war, but by the 71 war, these ANPRC 25s and some of them with boosters had come in. Plus, we had lines laid from the OP to the guns, but these lines could easily have been broken or cut by the enemy by their patrols. So we also had an internal fire order line within the regiment controlled by the adjutant of the regiment. So all the three gun position officers are always connected on fire order line and on exchange line and on PRC with the adjutant of the regiment, and the adjutant of each regiment is connected to the brigade major of the artillery brigade. So you see, the overall complexion of fire support is like this: that when a forward observation officer calls for fire, it goes directly to his battery command post. Sufficient for a battery to fire, the OP officer takes a battery target in which six guns fire. Registration is carried out first and then fire for effect with all the six guns. If somehow tactically it is felt that the fire of one battery is insufficient and you require the entire regiment to fire, then the OP officer calls for a mic target in which the fire is routed through the adjutant of the regiment, and he will then tell the forward observation officer that all batteries are available. In case all batteries are not available and another forward observation officer of another battalion is taking a shoot at the same time, then the adjutant says only two batteries are available, but he allots a different scale of ammunition. That means if he says scale 2, means the fire deficiency of one battery will be made up by the other batteries firing additional ammunition for that forward observation officer. And ultimately, when there is a battalion attack or a company level attack, uh, let me make it very clear: no infantry battalion can go in for an attack with just its direct support battery, that is one battery. No, it never happens. You require minimum 11 to 12 fire units to support a battalion attack, which is two company up. So fire support, fire resources are very essential to provide to the infantry battalion or to the armored regiment. In which case, not only my regiment, but even the other regiments of the other brigades are made available by the brigade major of the artillery brigade with the concurrence of the commander artillery. And this is very well coordinated. As an example, I'll tell you when the Garipur battle took place, the famous battle on 21 November, in which I had participated. Uh, uh, the 42 Infantry Brigade had own regiment 6 field, but
Okay.
that fire was inadequate for a complete 14 Punjab battalion attack.
I think the entire battalion was there.
Absolutely. So in that battle, not only did 6 field regiment fire, but the fire resources of 14 field regiment were also made available, and also 67 field regiment, which was part of 32 infantry brigade. And in that, as you would realize, 45 cavalry lesser squadron played a marvelous role in knocking out 11 tanks.
Right, right.
In Major T.P. Narag was
Still in action.
action. In that case, my battery was placed at priority call on 21 November. Therefore, I moved up onto the flanks and deployed next to 6 Field Regiment, crossing that river on the Kabadak bridge, which was done very well by 102 Engineer Regiment, one of their companies. So I moved ahead on the request of my second in command, who happened to be a coursemate of Major Narag, 9th NDA course. Yeah. So when Major Narag realized that he doesn't have medium gun support, so the other two medium batteries of 78 medium regiment were not available, which very many people don't know why and when, which I also got to know after the 71 war, or rather I got to know after that. You see, both these medium batteries were on orders of the Artillery Brigade and the 9 Infantry Division were targeting the Jessore airfield.
Okay.
That's why 14 Field Regiment was placed in support of the armor battle during their indirect fire support. And my battery was firing also in indirect support to the FOO of 78 Medium Regiment who was there with Major Naran. I fired at his orders, and I also did engage enemy tanks on open sights when I saw them in front of me. But on that day, the two tanks that limped across in front of my gun position were at about 5 to 600 meters, and I didn't open fire on them. Otherwise they would have charged on me because I knew they were limping out of battle. And subsequently, as probably I think Brigadier Satish Gupta has mentioned to you, I was with him. He shot those tanks subsequently on the way to Siramani and to Khulna. I was there to support 45 cavalry in their armor battle with the enemy 3 independent armored squadron, and all other guns available from 9 artillery brigades fired for 14 Punjab and 45 cavalry. This cover of the infantry and the armor, that you cannot successfully fight a battalion level or an armored regiment battle with only your direct support battery. You require minimum the entire regiment, and as per the mathematical scale, minimum of 11 fire units are required to fight an infantry battalion battle. If you don't have 11, you can make do with 8 or 9, but then the infantry has to accept it. And this is the same format everywhere. As a gun position officer, I participated in the Battle of Burinda with 1st Jack Rifles, which was a total failure. Nearly a complete company had been massacred, but that battalion battle, that action was unsuccessful. Later on, Burinda was captured on 5th December after the declaration of war by 4C. That was a successful battle, and then of course we moved on because 107 Brigade fell back to Jessore. So then when in fact my gun position and the other locations were attacked by enemy aircraft on 22nd November, as you would have heard. I'll tell you what happened. You see, 14th Squadron Pakistan Airforce was at Dhaka, and they were preparing to stage forward to Jessore. And to prevent that, our artillery had bombarded Jessore airfield and made that unfit for the 14th PAF Squadron to stage forward. But on 22nd November, the Pakistani Airforce, these four aircraft came with their sabers, led by Wing Commander Chaudhary, and there was Flight Lieutenant Parvez Mehdi and Flying Officer Khalil Ahmed. So they attacked our areas on 22nd November, and at that time our Air Force 22 Squadron could not reach in time, and we were constantly under enemy air attacks. And we were wondering why our Air Force is not being called in. We were given the answer that war is not declared as yet, so we cannot get our Air Force. But on 22nd morning, after three air runs over our gun position and over 9 infantry divisions, finally at about 1400 hours that day, our 22 Squadron Air Force with those heroes Don Lazarus, Ganpati, Bassi, and Suarez, they came in. I saw the battle. I mean, I saw the dogfight in front of me. All of us saw it from 9 days through four, and finally, in that dogfight, our Nats shot down the enemy sabers. The two pilots ejected, one over foreseat and the other over first jet rifles. Infantry Brigade DM, his name is Major Reddy, later retired as Brigadier Ajit Reddy, gave orders to our regiment being the closest to send an armed escort to catch hold of both the pilots. So they were brought in. I had sent my junior commissioned officer with a guard of six. They were brought, and my second in command, Major Vasudev Krishna, carried out the interrogation with our adjutant, Captain Kapatnekar, and I was also called along with Lieutenant Gabriel Pereira, another subaltern gun position officer of another battery. We heard Parvez Bedi and Khalil Ahmed giving their stories, and ultimately, of course, we gave them tea, biscuits, looked after them in the proper manner as per the Geneva Convention, and then I blindfolded Parvez Bedi and Khalil Ahmed, took out their maps from their flying suits, and we saw their positions, their maps marked with all our gun positions, armor concentrations, and all our other
Every
vital.
kind of intel was out that the
Sorry?
enemy had. Every kind of intel that the enemy had was out.
Everything they had, our positions were marked in red, and when our second in command asked Parvez Bedi, incidentally, he became the chief of the air staff of the Pakistan Air Force in 1999 during the Kargil conflict. He told our second in command that all these locations have been given by the Mukti Bahini. These people were then handed over to Major G.B. Reddy, the brigade major who came. They were taken to the David quarters and then onward dispatched through Eastern Command to Delhi. So, yes, and then of course on the 29th was the Battle of Burinda, which I told you. And we had a lot of counter bombardment firing on my gun position. We had a lot of visits. In fact, the Defence Minister Jagjeevan Ram, with his wife, visited our area in front, that is 14 Punjab. And
There are
yes,
pictures of him and General Arora on the tank.
there are pictures. And then subsequently, a lot of visitors, even Field Marshal Manekshaw had visited the front line. We never saw him, but we got to know. And then on 1st December, again there was heavy firing. And on 3rd December, our commanding officer called us for a conference. All of us went to the administration area. There was a sand model, and the commanding officer told us specifically that if war breaks out, what we are supposed to do. So I have a feeling now, in hindsight, that maybe on a deep to low level basis, the commanding officers of the regiments and the brigade commanders had probably been told what is likely to happen.
Because you were
And
a second lieutenant, you would not be told, of
so
course.
I didn't know anything. I was only taking orders and firing, and I was full of josh. And
Question, sir. You were firing from, still you were from across the border, right, sir? Firing from
yes,
there.
yes, we were firing from the Indian side, but we were very close to the border. In one of the cases that I told you, in the Garipur action, I moved my guns across the border, and so we were poised. So in fact, some of our locations, even before war was declared, were already across the international border due to certain compulsive reasons. And therefore, on 3rd, when we came back from the commanding officer's briefing, uh, there was, I had received my birthday gift. My birthday is on 18th December. So
Okay.
my parents had sent a Bush transistor
Mm-hmm.
which came to me much earlier. Our postal services were good, Field Post Office.
Mm-hmm.
And uh, I took it to my gun position thinking that probably there's a box of sweets. That's what my troops thought. And they asked me at about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, sir, can we open it? I said, yes, of course. I said, if it is sweets, we'll all share it.
Mm-hmm.
But out came a Bush transistor. So there were luckily some batteries also in that.
Mm-hmm.
So my troops opened it, my command post staff, and funnily when they tuned in, the inaugural news was that the Pakistan Air Force had bombed all along the Indian Western Front. And we
Genghis
had
Khan, Operation Genghis Khan. Correct.
Genghis Khan absolutely right, and therefore, and we were told to constantly wait for the Prime Minister's, broadcast. So we
Mm-hmm.
kept waiting, but in the meanwhile, we had received orders to formally open fire full blast. So the entire artillery opened up on that front. We had the legitimate reason to do so because Pakistan had attacked us on the Western Front.
Mm-hmm.
So we were full of joy. We kept firing, and on my new radio, small transistor, we heard the news when Prime Minister Indira Gandhi announced that India was compelled to declare war. There was no other alternative, and the president had declared emergency. So then, of course, my duties as gun position officer commenced. We moved ahead. Since you have asked me to recapitulate my duties as gun position officer, I reached the Jingargacha area,
Mm-hmm.
the Hamadak River, about southwest of it. Jessore was about some 10 to 12 kilometers.
Mm-hmm.
There on the river line, I realized that the first Jack Rifles, the battalion I was in direct support with, had already done an amphibious, rather assault boat crossing across the river. The river was about 50 to 75 meters wide, but was in spate. So at the time, I realized that I have no means to cross the river,
Okay.
and I went down to the river line. It was about 2:33 in the afternoon, but it starts getting dark in East Pakistan at that
Mm-hmm.
time. So I reached the river line and I didn't know what to do. Uh, I had very little service, as you know. I
Mm-hmm.
was commissioned only in December, and now it was, December, so just even less
One
than
year.
one year, yeah. So I went down and my troops were with me. I remember Subedar Hardas, Naib Subedar Raghunath, and Subedar Kher Singh. I remember my JSOs very well. And my TA Havaldar Nanak Chand. I can never forget these great champions. And they were there and they were wondering what this greenhorn second lieutenant is going to do. And they were all, war veterans of the 1962 and 65 war. So they were all battle hardened, whereas I was not. I had only done battalion operation in the Indian Military Academy. Uh, so I went down to the river line and I saw a young captain there, giving orders for something. So I approached him, and being a second lieutenant, I went in front and saluted him. And he said, Ajit Apte, what are you doing here? So I said, sir, this is what I'm doing. The war is started, as we all know, and I need to cross this river because I'm supporting first Jack Rifles. And down the line, when I was walking, I saw the 45 cavalry, some PT 76 trying to do a crossing. I didn't know who it was then, but I just saw a captain and I didn't bother much. And I came back and Mara told me that one raft is ready, and he told me that do one favor. There are some refugees or some of the so-called Mukti Bainis
Mm-hmm.
or villagers. They also need to cross the river.
Mm-hmm.
So I will have to take them with me. So we went across and I recorded the guns in what we call as a modified angle method. When we don't have the whole battery and we don't have the survey party of the regiment,
Mm-hmm.
we have to bring the guns on the grid so that the forward observation officer and the guns are on the same grid.
Okay.
Uh, uh, which in simple terms is from a geographical perspective, when we fire, artillery guns fire with our shells going up to nearly 4,000 feet up in the sky, and then they descend down like a parabolic trajectory. So we take care of non-standard wet conditions. For the 25 pounder gun, we don't take into consideration the rotation of the earth and the curvature of the earth. But in long range guns, which fire up to nearly about 30 kilometers, this part comes in. But in my guns, that was not so. But we still need to record the guns and be on the same grid. So I did that, opened fire. Captain S.K. Sharma had already been wounded in the Battle of Orinda. He was out of action. We had Captain Malik with us, the other OP officer, and my battery commander was there, Major Mishra. So I fired. Heavy firing took place on 5th. The regiment built up that same night across the bridge. 14 field came in, and on the 6th, all the guns moved up towards Jessore. And at that point of time, there was a quick enemy reaction to which our adjutant ordered something what we call as quick action. And let me also mention out here that in my battery, I had a gun which was provisionally condemned before the war, that this gun is unfit for firing. So my commanding officer and my adjutant Sapatnekar asked me, "Are you going to take this gun?" I said, "Yes, sir, I will take it, but I will not fire till it is actually required." But let me tell you, without telling any one of them, I took that risk. I only informed my battery commander and my OP officers that I shall be firing with this gun because the fire in any case is going on to the enemy territory. So I fired that gun, and God has been kind. We came out successfully. The gun fired beautifully. It had excessive CHC, that is called cartridge head clearance, had exceeded. Therefore, when the round is fired, the gases escape, and that particular round does not get adequate muzzle velocity to propel the projectile outside the barrel, and the intermediate and external ballistics of that projectile get adversely impacted. But God has been kind, nothing happened, and that gun fired successfully throughout the war. So now we opened fire, the whole regiment, and I still remember on the 6th there was heavy firing. Our ammunition was in the gun towers behind. We used cycle rickshaws. The Gupti Bahini and the villagers helped us out tremendously. And at that point of time, I saw first Jack rifles marching through our gun position. I had a very good friend there. He was the Academy Cadet Adjutant of the 35th NDA Force. His name, he had become a captain then, U.C. Gupta. And we had become very good friends. We went into the Battle of Jessore. They crossed my gun position. I was actually firing at rate intense, which is 5 rounds per minute. 5 rounds per minute, and some of my, some shoots were in charge super, which meant the barrel of the gun was getting hot. So he asked me, "Apte, anything I can do?" So I told him, "Yes, sir, kindly step down, give me your jeep and give me your 1 ton. I need to get ammunition which is at least 1 kilometer behind. My gunners are walking that distance or going in the cycle rickshaw." So and I said, "I am now reduced to firing each gun with only 2 to 3 people." He was very kind. He brought down. He unloaded his GU 734 radio set, which is used to contact the Air Force pilots when he wants to direct them on to fire on enemy targets. As a compensation, I gave him hot tea. In war, hot tea is always readily available because it is made with the stove put into the bucket, steel bucket. So even if you're marching, you'll get hot tea within 5 seconds. So I gave him hot tea. He was very happy. The guys brought ammunition for me. He fired. He went his way, and I never met him after that. Till I invited him to Pune in 2017 to have lunch with me in the RSI, which we also invited all the our own 22 Squadron Air Force pilots who had shot down the sabers. So he came that day, and of course when we fought the Battle of Jessore. That night, Jessore fell on 6th December, night 6th, 7th. I entered Jessore at 2 o'clock in the morning with my battery commander. You see, the success signal had been given. Actually, to be very honest with you, Jessore had been vacated by 107 Brigade because they knew that the 9th Div had encircled it. At that time, 50 Independent Parachute Brigade, that's a battalion. I think 7 paras and 8 paras were
Seven
also
and
there on
eight. Uh-huh.
infantry roles. Their 2 paras had been inducted for the ultimate airborne offensive at Tange. So I entered Jessore, and on the way we found a Pakistani fire brigade engine, which the Pakistan Army had been using for line laying. So my battery commander thought it would be a good idea to use that vehicle with our jeeps following. So we all got into that. My battery commander drove that fire engine, and we had 2 people. I was standing with a Sten machine carbine to fire in case any sniper fired at us. Very stupid of us. We were exposed to enemy fire,
Yeah, and
but
a fire truck engine is a big target, to be honest.
target. But we are foolhardy at times, and we did that. And then, of course, we entered Jessore, saw the cantonment vacated. Some of the officers' cars were still parked in their houses, everything. And then I, of course, saw some potential gun positions, and we came back. And then on 7th, by then Indira Gandhi, Prime Minister, had declared Bangladesh as a new nation, and 7 Punjab make infantry
Scott
bypassed us.
officers. Uh-huh.
Yeah, Scott. So 14 Punjab was there, 42 Brigade, and 7 Punjab I think was with 32 Brigade. They outskirted us on the flanks. Then we never entered Jessore. My guns went out of Jessore. We outflanked Jessore, and then there was a very famous counterattack by the Pakistanis at a place called Ramnagar.
Ramnagar.
And one of the 67 Field Regiment forward observation officers, I still remember his name, was Captain Kulkarni.
Okay.
He asked for fire. 67 Field Regiment, some of the guns were out of range, so he made a call to the brigade. And brigade major of the brigade knew that he needs to do something. So this is where I was mentioning to you how the artillery is one step ahead. You see, what happens is I may be a second lieutenant, but I am directly now dealing with the battalion commander of the 1st Jack Rifles. Similarly, our adjutant is artillery is always one level higher than the infantry and the armor. What I had done was I had kept one of my radio sets on the Delta 5 frequency, which is the brigade deck. Yeah, it was a wrong thing on my part. I was cheating, but I had cheated for good reasons because I wanted to hear what was happening on the brigade deck. I was not only keen to know what was happening on the regiment deck because I was on the regiment deck, but I had quietly kept a radio set on the Delta 5 net but never used it. It was only on listening watch. So I realized that 67 Field Forward Observation Officer is asking for frantic fire and asking for fire on defensive fire, save our souls. That means the enemy counterattack was very strong.
Very strong and close, might be.
Because you see, after you have captured a location, our infantry digs down and takes up what is known as a mobile defensive position.
Okay.
We don't hold that for too long. We are in an advance to contact mode, but you can't be sitting out in the open. So it was a defensive position taken, and the enemy had counterattacked because every enemy will counterattack so that they can regain the position.
Right.
So that is what Pakistanis were doing. This was at Ramnagar. But Kulkarni was calling for fire in support of his infantry battalion. 67 Field, some guns were out of range. So the frantic call went to the brigade, and the my adjutant was contacted by the brigade that Sapatnekar, on the fire order line, if your guns are in range. So I knew the target because I could hear Kulkarni giving the grid reference. I plotted it on my map, I had asked my guns to load one troop for registering the target. So when the adjutant responded in the affirmative to the brigade major, I called up the adjutant on the fire order line. I said, "Sir, I am ready. You give the fire orders to me." He said, "Okay, I don't know how you are ready, but I am giving you the fire orders. I'll take you to task subsequently." So I said, "Fine." And I opened fire because I was ready. I was tracking the grid reference. So within a few seconds, my guns opened up onto that location. And then he gave a drop correction, which was actually defensive fire, red, 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 which is now banned from the artillery. Defensive fire, red, red, red means you actually fire on my location
Right, right,
because in any case the enemy is already on my location.
right.
So
Yes, that's
this is defensive fire, red, red, red. It is no longer, I think, in use. So I spoke to my adjutant on the internal line. He said, "Fire, don't worry." Then he actually spoke to Kulkarni, and Kulkarni knew his set is being jammed by the Pakistanis. So he started speaking to us in Marathi because he knew now that the adjutant is Marathi and the Maharashtrian and the gun position officer also. So I caught on. I told him in Marathi that I said, "Sir, I am firing on your location." In Marathi, he told me, "Don't bother, you just fire." And ultimately, that was a great success. The enemy counterattack was beaten back. Then from there onwards, we continued, and there was stiff opposition in parts on the way to Khulna, Siramani, Shamgarh, Daulatganj, all these locations. Hill, we fired heavily on 10th, 11th, 12th. I will not go into details, but on 13th December in the Battle of Siramani, 26 Madras had severe casualties and our OP officer Captain Nakana with 26 Madras was killed in action. We had many casualties and so we continued firing 14, 15 and finally I reached, we were ordered to move ahead and there was a place called Giltala.
Giltala.
This is Giltala. And 6th Field Regiment was already there with 42 Brigade. And as you know, Brigadier Gulati has mentioned, because the armor was also moving with different brigades. So I was taking my guns ahead when I had no food. The administrative echelon had not stepped up, and that day we had no food. We were on hard scale ration, that is shakarpara and tea. When I reached the Giltala railway station, I saw some troops, our own troops, so I went to them. I met my very dear friend, Lieutenant Amitabh. He gave me half his puri and I had a few sips from his animal mud or pot tea. And to me, I tell you, Devu, that was more than a 7-star meal. When I went ahead, we bumped into 13 Dogras by mistake. Yeah, because there was an error in our communication with the second in command, and 13 Dogras stopped me. And they said, "Sir, you have reached the forward defensive locality of the Pakistani troops, and we are also held up. Go back, otherwise you will be fired upon." And sure enough, all the three gun position officers, myself, Gabriel Pereira, and Aurora, we were following, looking for our second in command and for our survey officer, then Captain Chaturvedi. Enemy started firing with artillery, and a few shells fell near us, and one of the pylons fell down. So it was a job turning back with our trailers, and luckily the guns were not with me. I was only in the reconnaissance party. So we turned back, and then we found our second in command waiting. He deployed us, and in that deployment area, I had to, go around, do some reconnaissance. We fired, and we were then asked to move ahead to support the Battle of Shamganj, Daulatpur, and Siramani. So we moved up. Yeah, we moved up. 350 Brigade had already moved up. I put my guns in the hide, and I moved aside into the Pakistani deployment area which they had vacated. When I reached there, of course, I took two people with me with 10 machine carbines and rifles in case we are sniped at. I went into a number of bunkers with the Pakistanis, and in one bunker I found briefcase.
Briefcase. Acha.
Yeah, I opened the briefcase. It was full of letters
Mm-hmm.
and photographs. There was an album, and I realized that the briefcase belonged to one Lieutenant Qurban Ali Raza. And I took the briefcase to my command post vehicle
Mm-hmm.
because we were still undeployed. We were in the height, and I was waiting, and I thought, let me open the briefcase. So I sat down, opened the briefcase. It was full of letters from Qurban Ali Raza's fiancée, apparently. But I kept that briefcase with me, and then of course we moved ahead, and again to be put into a hide without deployment because they said there is some possibility of an enemy air action, which frankly wasn't there. And at that point of time, this was, after firing on 15, this was on the 16th. We crossed a Pakistani army vehicle,
Mm-hmm.
and my troops told me, "Sir, that is a Pakistani vehicle, but they haven't opened fire on us." I said, "Leave it now, let's go ahead." So we reached ahead, and then I found a jute mill on the left.
Acha.
We stopped, and the entire artillery had stopped. So I went into the jute mill. I found a beautiful guest house, 5 stars.
Mm-hmm.
At that time, I heard some tank fire.
Tank fire.
Yes, yes. So I was very worried. I quietly, crept ahead of that guest house with my 10 machine carbine, and I made out that there was a tank engagement. So I didn't know what that tank engagement was, but in hindsight, I will tell you now what had happened. You see, in the story mentioned by Brigadier Satish Gupta,
That is what I was thinking as well, sir.
yes, so I didn't know then. I was also puzzled, and then I saw T-55 tanks ahead, and I knew that 45 cavalry had PT-76.
Mm-hmm.
So, second lieutenant, I was thoroughly confused. But I said, let the confusion continue, and I went ahead.
Acha.
So, when I went ahead, uh, I saw that there was no deployment order for us, and frankly, there was a fog of war. We didn't know what exactly was happening. I asked the adjutant. He said, one of our batteries is deployed. They've opened fire. Your battery may also deploy, but you are leading the regiment column, so we will not deploy you. You go ahead. I said, sir, there is some obstacle ahead, and we all held back. And the armored regiment is also ahead up. So I said, I am waiting in a hide. And this all I conveyed to him on the radio set PRC 25 quickly because we were on the move. The line communication was not through. So there, after some time, and I told you my troops had said that the enemy column never fired on us, so we were confused. We didn't know that the war is over in Dhaka
Mm-hmm.
and that another is taking place. We didn't know. So I was standing on the road when a Toyota vehicle drove up to me.
Acha.
Yeah. And I was quite confused. I said, Toyota vehicle coming. I stopped. A young captain got down. He was in black overalls, handsome, smart guy.
Mm-hmm.
I saluted him. I thought he's a Pakistan. I thought he's an Indian Army officer, Ahmed Corps. So I saluted him. I said, "Good afternoon, sir." He said, "Young man, the war is over." I said, "The war is over?" Then I realized he's a Pakistani Army officer.
Mm-hmm.
Who's the senior officer out here that I could meet? I didn't know what to do, but I saw one figure pacing up and down the road, maybe about 200 meters ahead. I realized that has to be an Indian Army officer. So I said, "You come with me. You leave your car here." He said, "We'll go in my car." I said, "No, you keep your car here. And we'll go ahead. You walk with me." So I took him, and there I met then Captain Satish Gupta.
Uh,
So I saluted him. I said, "Sir, good afternoon." And then Satish Gupta has narrated it beautifully in his podcast.
yeah.
This substantiates this earlier portion. Then Captain Satish Gupta, naturally the armored regiment was there. My regiment had not fetched up.
Mm-hmm.
So we all followed him. I think he took him to Colonel Chamwal, the commandant of 45 Cavalry.
Yeah.
So I saw Captain Satish Gupta, and then of course he has narrated what happened subsequently. I did tell him later, very recently, about 4 or 5 years ago, when I forgot him totally completely, And after that incident, of course, I'll come back to that. But I finally moved ahead and fired on 17th early morning at about 5 o'clock. Kept firing till 7:38.
Mm-hmm.
At 8 o'clock, my commanding officer came on the deck, and he said the war is over. He addressed all stations one for one, which is the adjutant, all stations three, that is all the gun position officers, all stations five, and all the battery commanders. The war is over. Cease firing and await further orders. So the further orders came that we need to go for the surrender at Khulna, and I got orders to move ahead to Khulna. While I was going to Khulna, I got orders to go to the Khulna port because we were told to check up if there are any Pakistani sailors who need to be rounded up.
Okay.
And as you would know, 107 Brigade continued fighting an extra day.
Uh-huh.
One of the news is that they thought the 7th Fleet vessels would come to Chandla, Mangla, and Khulna
Mm-hmm.
and rescue some of their troops to be evacuated so that they don't have to surrender.
Mm-hmm.
That's actually what General Niazi wanted.
Mm-hmm.
But he outsmarted 7th Fleet, Soviet submarines
They were
outsmarted
there.
the fleet, and 107 Brigade, ultimately Brigadier Hayat, decided to surrender. And then I saw a familiar face, so I called out to him. I said, "Are you Lieutenant Qurban Ali Raza?" So he said, "Yes." He said, "How do you know me?" So I said, "Did you leave behind your belongings?" He said, "Yes." I said, "Did you have a briefcase which is light brown in color?" "Yes." I said, "I have your briefcase." He said, "What are you saying?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Could I have the briefcase?" I met some of the Pakistani troops there. Weapons were all piled up into a mountain.
Mm-hmm.
They looked at me and they were very humiliated. And they told me, uh, which I'm narrating to you in English, but they mentioned to me in Urdu. They said, "Janab, if our army had officers like your Indian army, we would not have been reduced to humiliation, to this humiliating state." So it speaks great volumes for the officers and troops of the Indian Army because all our officers have fought from the front line. We have led our troops at all levels, irrespective of our personal safety. And I must say here that full marks to the troops of the Indian Army who have fought valiantly. We have always been blended as one homogeneous combination to fight anywhere. So Qurban Ali Dawar said, "I am also from Lucknow." I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Yes." By then he started calling me by my first name, Ajit. He said, "Ajit, my parents were in Aminabad, Lucknow after partition till 1954-55.
Acha.
It is only then that we migrated to Pakistan." So I said, "Yes," because Riza said he's from Lucknow, Aminabad. And I said, "I have studied in Lucknow." I didn't give the name of the school. So he said, "I've also studied in Lucknow." He said, "Ajit, which school were you in?" I said, "I was in St. Francis School in Hazratganj." He said, "What a great coincidence. I'm also from St. Francis School." And I was there for the surrender. I saw General Dalbir Singh take over, the everything I saw. I've got pictures from my box camera.
Mm-hmm.
A wonderful moment. And I think what I learned in my 36 years of service, I had learned all that in the first year of my service in war. I was lucky to command the same regiment down the line, which stood me in good stead in command of my regiment and command of my brigade subsequently. It's been a wonderful innings, nearly 36 years in the Indian Army,
Mm-hmm.
and today I'm a veteran, and I look back at these moments with great pleasure and pride, and that's it.
Have you been invited to Bangladesh, sir?
Yes, yes. In 2010, I was in probably the first delegation
Okay.
invited to Bangladesh, and my wife and I both were invited. They looked after us very well,
Mm-hmm.
and I met their president and prime minister then, and they were all praised for the Indian Armed Forces. It was a wonderful event,
Mm-hmm.
and yes, definitely, Mufti Baini, Mufti Jodha,
Acha, sir.
he welcomed us in Bangladesh.
Mm-hmm.
It was a wonderful experience. and therefore it was all very, very good. You're right. I've been to Bangladesh.
Wonderful, sir. And I also saw the letter that a Bangladeshi person had written to you. It was
Yes,
written Brigadier General, not
yes,
Brigadier.
right.
But unfortunately, the meeting between Brigadier Ajit Apte and this Bangladeshi person had not taken place.
So this is the beauty of the Indian Armed Forces, that we continue our great camaraderie and friendship.
It's really nice talking to you, sir, after finally getting to see you at the same time.
Yeah, thank you, Devu. Very kind of you,
Thank you,
and I
sir.
must compliment you for all the great work that you have done, and making these podcasts is absolutely superb. And I must compliment you because you people are doing great work to portray the Indian Armed Forces, and thank you very much for this.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
So thank you very much, Devu, and all good wishes.
Good
God
wishes
bless.
to you, sir. And thank you for your services in 71.
Thank
Thank
you
you,
very
sir.
much.